Hello, welcome to Talking Sens, the iMoney podcast. I'm your host, Azrin, and today we have a guest, Mr. Ka Hoe, who's going to be talking to us about financial planning and exploring P2P investments as an alternative for investments. Again, thank you for coming, Ka Hoe. Before we get into it, can we just have a little bit about yourself? Tell me a bit about yourself and what you guys do and where you're from and your financial advisory company as well.
Of course, thank you for the opportunity, right? I've watched iMoney podcast and
thank you.
previously, yeah, and also thanks to CapBay, the sponsor for this video. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to appear here. I think one of my intention is really to reach out to as many Malaysians as possible on financial education, because I think we didn't learn money in school, right?
That's the thing, right? Financial education is not exactly something you are aware that you need to know until it's too late.
Well, I think we learn math, but we never really learn.
Yeah, but math, it's good
actual
foundation,
yeah.
but it's not financial education.
Correct.
Which is what you guys are doing with, correct me if I'm wrong, JA Academy?
Yeah, JA, which is a Personal Finance Academy.
Right,
we wanted to start this as a result of my experience of going through 3 crises. And I felt that it's important for people to learn from mistakes. Yeah,
right.
Because it's like not many people can really make mistakes of that magnitude and survive to tell the story about it. Right?
Oh yeah, or rather, people can't afford to make that kind of mistakes. Once people go through a financial crisis, they might be, they end up with a lot of debts or financial burden that they might not be able to claw back out of. But
Exactly.
You mentioned those 3 crises, right? If you don't mind sharing, what were those 3 crises? Because I've read a bit about it, that you had your first crisis when you were quite young at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that was back in 27. So okay, maybe a bit of context before I share my crisis, right? So I'm born and bred in KL. My dad's from Bentong. Yeah, so we live in this part in Taman Tun. A lot of people will assume that we are from a rich family.
Well off,
yeah, but actually we live in the poorest part in Taman Tun.
People don't realize it's like, you just assume we're for Bangsa. That means everyone's rich, but not necessarily true, right?
Correct. So we are like a middle family income. I would say parents really gave me a lot. I think from time when I'm from secondary to school to when I first started working, I haven't really tasted so-called failure. So it's been very smooth, and I think it's a result of my parents really empowering me to do give a lot of flexibility. But I think one thing hit me was when I wanted to work very early. I started work at 20. In fact, the time, it was possible to get a degree in less than 3 years,
Back then, right? Yeah.
So I was considered a high flyer from high school to when I first started working. Even in my work environment, I was considered this like the blue-eye boy of the bosses because I work very hard. Because I'm very determined. I thought everyone's like that, but actually, maybe not everyone know their purpose in life. So as a result, I got married at 25. I bought my first property at 21.
21?
Yeah, my second property at 22.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, for some people, that's probably quite early in terms of like taking on that financial challenge, right? What kind of mind space were you at the time that you thought you would be able to undertake that kind of...
Yeah, because I think I wanted to really take care of my parents, the time financial freedom was a big word. And I thought if I can reach sort of that destination early, then I don't have to struggle all the way to 55, which is what most people conventionally want to, right? I guess when I started, my mindset was like, hey, buy a house first, then buy a car. Because my dad provided me like a 30-year-old, very old Mitsubishi Lancer.
Okay, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. And I think I used that as a vehicle to test my wife,
okay, so is she okay with that? Then you say, okay,
correct.
wife materials.
So I think at the time, I was very focused on really being successful. So when I got married at 25, when we expected our first child at 27, that's where I felt, oh, maybe I'm running a bit too fast, because that was the first crisis I hit, I guess, at my career, I was progressing very well, to the point where I had my first promotion in 2 years, then I got married. You know, in the bank the time, you can't really get married in the same department.
Oh,
yeah, there's a policy.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you guys were...
We were colleagues, then we became ex-colleagues.
Oh, okay.
So we were girlfriend, boyfriend, then we become ex-boyfriend, girlfriend.
Okay, there's a whole story there.
Yeah, so I think as a result of that, 27, the time when I bought the 2 property, when I was hit with this crisis, I would consider it like a very big project the time in the bank. So because of my track record, they decided to give me that project. It's a 2 billion ringgit project.
Oh, okay.
And I was handling 10 staff, and I think the first crisis, the short story is that I was stuck. Yeah, I couldn't move the project, and it was on the verge of failure.
Oh, okay.
So I couldn't take failure, because that was really my first failure, right?
Okay.
And at the time I was thinking like, oh my God, how am I going to get out of this
So-called
crisis, right?
Yeah.
Because I was staring at 2 property I had to pay. My wife is going to deliver our first son. Now I don't know who to turn to, because the fact is like, my main income is
that
really,
salary, that job,
correct,
right?
correct. I cannot go to another employer say that, hey, hire me, because I effed up in this
job,
right?
And I need more.
Correct, and I think industry is pretty small. Yeah. Now looking back, I think it was a good event that happened that I could learn and grow myself.
It is an experience to, like, once you felt it, you know how to deal with it, right?
What I'm trying to say here is that from that point onwards, I felt that I was looking for somebody to help me, but I didn't know who it was that can help. Especially like, you know, in 2008, right? There wasn't really a financial planning, so-called industry that people were helping to consult, to coach, to guide you.
Not really an advisory
Correct.
accessible for the general public, right?
Because I think right now, there's still a lot of people having the misconception of like,
what is
when you tell people, I'm a financial planner, they're like, oh, are you trying to sell me insurance?
Yeah, because usually it's like, oh, you sell insurance, is it? I mean, it's the common misconception. Again, it is such a fairly new industry in a sense, right? And I'm assuming at that point, when you face your first crisis, your turning point to understanding that there's not really anyone teaching you about this, at least in Malaysia, what I'm understanding there, because outside of Malaysia, there's a wealth of information there, right?
I think that time was still a lot of information from the US. You know, the first book everyone will read, I think in terms of financial education, will be Robert Kiyosaki's.
Of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad or Cash Flow Quadrant.
I read my first book, which was Cash Flow Quadrant.
Which is, it's not his first book, right? It's like
No, it was my first book. His first book was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, because that's the one that most people would know him from.
Correct.
And I think like that book, I think really gave people an idea of what it means to be financial freedom.
So like the first perspective of people like, oh, actually there's such a book that teaches financial education. So to me, I felt my calling at the time was like, if I'm facing this problem, there could be a lot of people also facing this problem. Why not I go and learn, do it myself so that I can share with more people. You know, that was my first.
But you didn't immediately go to that, right? Because after the first so-called crisis, you didn't jump straight into being a financial planner, right?
I was cold storage at the time.
Oh, okay.
And I had about a year. I know I wanted to pursue my entrepreneurship, but I didn't have any product. I didn't have network. I didn't have money. I only know 2 things. One is that I like to help people. The second thing, I'm good with numbers. So a friend came in and pitched me the idea to be an insurance agent.
Oh, okay. So.
And for the record, I hated insurance agent at the time because I was like sort of like
salesman
into buying certain policy. But the short story is I joined the P company at the time.
Okay.
And I guess when I joined, I was joining from a perspective I wanted to practice financial planning with the same mindset of really sharing of financial education, whatever I'm going through. At least there was a platform for me to share with my clients.
Okay.
So when I finally got my license in financial planning in 2015, a lot of my clients back then in the P company, they couldn't really tell what's the difference because I was already practicing financial planning. which is a good thing. The bad thing is they will say, why do I have to pay you more for what you're already
doing right. I mean, but that's the misunderstanding of what actually comes in part with financial planning, like financial education there, right? There are things that you learn that you might not realize without a professional on board. And again, you were at that point, first crisis, second crisis.
So that was the first crisis. From that time, I took 3 years to build, but I gave up a 5,000 ringgit career.
So you gave up that career in the bank industry? And
when I told my mom and my wife, I think they were like looking at me, are you sure? Because
crazy, is it?
Yeah, because
it's stable, right?
if you know me that time, right, I'm an introvert. So they were like, selling is the last thing you want to do. I also think that selling is the last thing I want to do. But I think if you really want to pursue this entrepreneurship journey, I think selling is a must-learn skill. Yeah. So I'm sure now you cannot really tell, right? I'm an introvert.
Yeah, because it seems like you're so normal to engage people in this kind of way. So wasn't that a bit of a challenge even on that itself to be in a role that you're not familiar with?
So because I think the intention was right. I wanted to meet people. I needed to improve my communication skills.
Expand your abilities and
to be a trainer, to be a speaker. I knew I had to go through that path. But I think what I wanted to lead you to is that fast forward 3 years, I've built my income to maybe 5 figures, which is good. Then I started to buy a property a year from 2010 to 2012. Which is, I was thinking like, this is like, I'm on my path towards my financial freedom, because how many people can do that kind of thing? So I felt at the top of my world until when the 2012, I got into my second crisis.
Oh, okay. Because it kind of built up that saying that you've achieved quite well in terms of like your salary and stuff, right? But taking on buying a property each year for 2010 to 2012, how many properties were you having at that point?
Right before the 2012 crisis, it will be about maybe 5.
5.
So to me, I felt like I'm there already. Until I met the ex-colleague in 2012. He was standing on the stage telling how he bought 4 property in 2 months.
4 property in 2 months?
Yeah, then my jaw dropped like your jaw.
Okay. The problem with that is that sometimes you hear that, it's like, wow, really?
True.
How?
Scam, right?
Exactly. You're skeptical at first, but okay, again, I'm sure there's a story to this.
So eventually, because it's an ex-colleague, so I approached him. I was like, how do you do it, right? I'm sure you're curious as well. So he asked me to join this property investment course. The short story is also I bought 16 property in 3 months. But that was the story I keep telling people in COVID. Don't do that.
Yeah, it kind of seems like...
Because a lot of people, when I tell that story, they think that, wow, this guy is another guru trying to tell or sell his things, right? But whenever I share the story, I share with a lot of humility and also a lot of humbleness, because I wanted to share the story from a perspective, how people could learn from my experience or my mistake. So we have a playbook of how to get maximum loan. So we were able to do that, but for the wrong reason, because we actually got into this joint venture with 7 other property investors.
Okay.
So we do whatever we had to do, buying our own name, proxy, investment holding company.
All this entire process that comes with it.
So I think when 2015 started, the property winter, the GST era. I don't know whether you are old enough that time.
Okay. I mean, it's a dark era for a lot of people. We had to face a lot of financial difficulties, but how did that affect you?
So that time was the turning point, because the 7 property investors slowly one by one dropped out. Because my biggest share, I'm the biggest share, at the highest point we had about 40,000 per month installment. And then our rental, we could only get like 28,000.
Wow, okay, that's...
So in total it's like 12,000 gap, right? My biggest share, I'm the biggest share. So my portion was having a 5,000 deficit, I think starting from 2016, 2017, all the way up until COVID. So when COVID hit, I was very happy because, the loan moratorium.
So there's a bit of a boon for you guys, right?
And I felt like, is this the second chance that...
Saving grace a bit.
I'm getting... Maybe this is time, because I always in the 2016 to 2020, there were a lot of nonsense going on in the market where people were buying property, they were doing cash out, and then people were committing suicide because they couldn't pay the loan, right? And all these gurus were doing all this.
There were a lot of teaching,
So that spoke to me very deeply because I felt that I went through that stage, but I didn't do all the nonsense, But I felt that I needed to tell people not to do this and share my story. So I thought when COVID hit, that's sort of like a good opportunity for me to do what I'm doing right now, like in the last 4 years.
I mean, prior to that, it kind of seems like you were more focused on building your own wealth and building yourself up, right? And I would assume that going through those crises, that was the turning point for you to feel like there is a space for people like yourself, for financial planners, to tell people like how to approach financing, plan your finances in a safer, smart way. Because again, rather than they try out what you did, which is like jumping headfirst into a lot of these situations, I would say you were quite lucky to be able to come back out of it.
Yeah, you know what? The last few years, especially during COVID, at the time when I was looking back, right, a lot of the partners or a lot of the people in the same property investment course actually either they are bankrupt or they gone to AKPK. So I'm looking at myself like, what am I doing right? I can still survive, to still tell my story. There must be something, right?
Yeah.
So that's why that gave me the confidence to start JA, the Personal Finance Academy, at the time, because I felt during COVID there was a lot of people also facing the same problem. The debt, the loss of income. So I felt like, hey, this is the right time, and of course, anybody starting something new, they will have imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
So when I first came out, I was asking myself, really, can I do
people
this?
Want to do?
Can I really help people? And I can say this for sure right now, after 4 years, not really, maybe after the second year, I already had this confidence that, my problem at that time, it was really a level 4 problem. And when I started during COVID, a lot of people were having the level 1 to level 3, which was very easy to solve.
So a lot of issues that people should have known, they didn't know. That's where you guys come in to help in with that. And this time we're going to talk to Ka Hoe about his JA Academy, which is about educating people on financial planning and whatnot. But before we get into it, the question that we need to bring up and we need to tell people is, why is financial planning important anyway? Because you do J advisory as well, which is what you guys do, but J Academy JA is separate, right? So if you could go into detail more about it.
So I just wanted to clarify this because I think when I first started, because I didn't know what I was doing, I just wanted to help the market intentionally, right? So during that time, I started J advisory. With the intention of providing financial education to the market. But I didn't realize, because of this name, and also because as a licensed financial planner, people think that J Advisory is a financial planning company. So for the record, and especially this year, we have rebranded from J Advisory to become JA, a Personal Finance Academy. So because that is focused on financial education. So I play 2 different roles. As a licensed financial planner, my license is actually tied to Wealth Vantage Advisory.
Okay.
So imagine like doctors, right? Doctors, they are technically not employed by the hospital.
Right.
They are essentially solopreneurs. Or maybe they have a team. It can be a business owner, depending how big their practice is. But you can see certain doctors actually practice in multiple different
clinics and hospitals, right?
Yeah. So essentially, as a financial planner, we need a financial hospital to practice in.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're also not employed by the firm. We're also solopreneurs.
You just come in when you're needed to work there, is it?
I mean, that is the right understanding, but we do go in very often.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's always something to deal with, right?
Yeah. So because we needed the hospital facility, hospital will have their blood test, their MRI, X-ray, the operating theatre. So similarly, as a financial planner, we needed the financial hospital, as in the Wealth Vantage, to provide access to like the blood test, the MRI,
All the legwork and everything, right?
yeah. So I think the good thing about Well Vantage is they do have certain departments they support in those areas where we need support, yeah. And also because as a licensed entity with Bank Negara and Securities Commission, essentially to prescribe medication, so to speak.
Of course, you need license.
Correct, like the insurance, the unit trust, the wills. So all those are like medication we prescribe.
And it needs to be regulated.
Correct. But as a financial planner, we need to diagnose first before we give out the medication. You cannot be giving out the same Panadol for the headache.
Just simply give.
The gastric and the backside pain, right?
There's a different understanding of what the diagnosis is, right?
Correct.
So, yeah.
So as a financial planner, the mindset is really to go in, help, and get your hands dirty. But as a financial educator, it's like, have you seen doctors who go out there and give talks, education program?
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's like, just to share their experiences and knowledge and whatnot, right? But I'm assuming there's more to it than that. It's also to entice them to join the field or something like that?
Yeah, so I'm one of the few that have this passion wanting to go out there to spread financial literacy to more Malaysian, because I felt that similarly with the doctor's mindset, many would want to do that knowing the fact that there is not enough doctors to treat 30 million Malaysians. So it's always better to do prevention than cure. So similarly on the financial education space, I founded JA, the Personal Finance Academy, to essentially go out there to
talk to people.
Empower people. It's like I've got this financial planning process I've developed. It's like you follow this 5-step, bodo, you double your wealth.
Oh, okay.
But many people may not be able to engage me because my fee may range from 6,000 to 20,000 depending on the complexity of the problem, right? So when COVID hit, so I took this, made it in the syllabus, where people can learn for themselves at the lower price point, more affordable price point. And the mindset is really about trusting the person to learn it on their own and to take action.
So really in that sense that JA is really more, you're stepping as an educator role, trying to teach people about this. I mean, just to pick your brain on this, because it kind of seems like there's not as much people doing this, or?
Yeah, so I agree with you, there's not many, but I think there's a few people before me that been there, done that. I think the first name came up to mind will be CF Liu. I think he's also a licensed financial planner. He also run his education. And he partnered with KC Lau, and I've got the opportunity to work with him, especially during COVID. And I agree with you, there's not many people. I think because it's two different space, running a practice, financial planning practice, is already takes a lot of time and energy and effort.
Yes.
And I think it really takes a different level of passion and enthusiasm, wanting to do education, speak in front of a few hundred people. And
but then again, there is the rise of financial influencers, I would say, that do share their knowledge to a lot of people, and there have been misunderstandings and here and there. And when do you stand with that kind of people coming up?
the funny story is people ask me, hey, you're a financial influencer. Really? Well, I don't see myself as a financial influencer. Neither do I see myself as a guru. But I see myself as somebody coming into the market wanting to teach foundational money skills that people can learn and get results. But talking about financial influencer, I think it's a new thing, and I find that okay, I'll give you an analogy. It's like, is a knife dangerous?
Depends on how you use it.
Exactly, right? So a knife is useful because people need to use a knife to cut the meat, the vegetable
and everything. It has
it's
utility.
essential.
It's utility.
But it can be also dangerous because the same
can
knife,
stab someone.
you can kill, right? If you ask my opinion, I think it's depending on how you look at it. I think there is a certain amount of accountability within yourself that if you're going to listen to a financial influencer, you still need to do your due diligence. You cannot just follow blindly and you eventually blame them for whatever mishaps. For me, right, when I go through my financial crisis, of course I went through the property investment course, but I still claim or I still take responsibility because
it's your own actions, right?
In Chinese, there's this saying, if the cow don't want to drink the water, you cannot push the cow and drink the water.
It's their choice.
Exactly. So I think from the financial influencers point of view, I think Bank Negara and Securities Commission are also developing certain
Yes,
framework.
there's guidelines now for like how people can give this kind of advice to people, because you see these cases of like investing advisors saying, oh, we should invest in this stock. They post a YouTube video, oh, this performance of the stock and whatnot. And things did not go well, and people ended up with a lot of losses, especially in the space of something like blockchain kind of stuff. Yeah, crypto. There have been, various cases of people falling into certain things. And I understand that your role in that is to educate people more to avoid that kind of risky, unnecessary mistakes.
I'm glad you brought that up, because actually when we first started, we positioned ourselves as a debt management specialist. But when we go on in the last 4 years, we found out that our true enemy is really about the illiteracy that's causing the Ponzi scam and the debt.
I mean, it is amazing to me to see to this day that people are still unaware of like what needs to, what considered is a risky investment or what's considered a straight out scam.
But I mean, if you really look at it, it doesn't surprise us, because we never learned this in school, right?
That's it, yeah, we go back to it. It's not exactly in education. Of course, maybe in primary school or secondary school, it's not exactly in education. But once you enter college and everything, you would assume.
But there's no formal.
Yeah, right. There's no actual.
I think the good thing right now is that, in 2018, the government actually came out with this thing called financial education. I'm sure you know that. I think iMoney is part of it, right?
We'll try our best to, educate the masses as well.
Yeah, same here. I mean, we do our little effort, whatever we can do to support the initiative. I think it's a good thing, because they are going to Ministry of Education as one of the partners to really go down to the grassroots to educate.
If we look at the statistics, a lot of people nowadays how they don't have enough savings, they don't have enough investments provided, and some might not even be able to retire once they reach a certain age. It is a stark reminder that a lot of people are unaware what needs to be done.
The funny thing is that there is ample or abundance of this kind of awareness. But I do a lot of financial education, taught both webinar and physical, right? Mm-hmm. The funny thing is that people have become immune to this kind of news. They will just look at the headline, they're like, okay, next. It's like they already know it. But psychologically, the behavior and the habit is something, it's like they know, but they can't
do anything about it.
Right? So I think where JA comes in, right, we were well positioned in the sense we wanted to work on the behavioral and the relationship with their money. So that we can help them. I think that's why a lot of people come to us and ask, like, how do you get this continuous transformation kind of result? Because we are aware we are working on this level. Yeah, but there's a deeper level on belief system. We know we are not the expert there, so we will just pass our partners.
Of course, there's a certain point that you can help. There's some people who do so much, there's nothing else you can do but send them off to something better.
So exactly like when you point out, there's no shortage of awareness. But I think people are aware. It's just that
they don't know what to do.
Correct. It's like, you're not supposed to buy the iPhone because it's going to cost you that 6,000 and you have to split it into 36 months. But subconsciously, you want to get the iPhone, right?
Of course, yes. There's still that desire.
So that's where the challenge comes in. So where we're coming from as a financial planner or financial educator, we want to support people to get the iPhone. But we empower them to make better money decision. It's like, if you really want to go for this, then what are you willing to give up?
To be able to assess your financial situation in a way that's much more objective and in a way that's not going to ruin your finances down the line.
Correct. They still can have their Starbucks. Because I think that the school that we learn from is like, you cannot have all this luxury. It's like, always have to be frugal. But do you know frugal has a cost to it?
There is hidden cost in a sense, right?
Give you an example, right? I worked with this client. She had this 20-year-old car. She don't want to change, But when we go through a financial,
the cost of keeping
exactly
the car, right?
The cost of keeping it is so much more than buying a new car. Then I'm like, hey, buy a new car. Then she cannot bring herself to do that. The underlying reason.
Yeah, the programming kind of like.
Because she said this so powerful, and I was like, wow. She said that she saw her parents, because she's doing well enough to afford a new car. She saw her parents make money so hard that she felt she wasn't deserving of now that even she can afford it. I'm like,
Okay, that sounds like a quite understandable mistake. In your academy so far, just a sidetrack.
Yeah.
What were some of the worst examples that you come across? Who had the most troubles that came into you and like needed your help to fix their problems there?
I mean, I've seen my fair share of a lot of people getting scammed, investing into Ponzi, getting into very bad
So that's
debts,
still
right?
common.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I just share this example because I just posted on my social media a couple of days ago. How do you help somebody who have a 20,000 deficit? Is that bad enough?
Wow, okay. For me, as a layman, that's quite bad already.
So this guy came into my class during COVID. We had a one-to-one. And if you ask me 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to support him. But, because of the tools, the system and strategies we empowering people in our syllabus, the first thing we got him to do, that process of understanding where he is in terms of his financial situation, we saw that his problem was a result of lack of income. So a lot of people, they muddle the debt problem. They didn't realize that it's caused by two main reasons. One is due to mismanagement, which we know of.
Of course, yeah.
That's easy to solve. There's the other reason of people don't generate enough income. So this guy is a business owner. He sells shoes, very famous brand, S1S.
Okay.
So during COVID, everyone cannot do business,
Yes,
right? But he's very positive. He thinks next month is going to start.
Wow, okay.
Next month is going to start. So he will continue to spend like 20,000 a month for his family.
Okay.
Yeah. Still living large at the time.
Okay, that's mismanagement already.
Okay, we're not going to go there. But essentially, COVID lasted 1.5 years, right?
Yes, of course.
So that's how he built up that debt,
Because he's constantly spending in a deficit at that point.
and charging into his credit card.
Oh, okay.
So from that perspective, when we help him to identify the root cause, I say, bro, it's really the lack of income. It's not really a mismanagement. So as long as you can start generating income, then your debt will go away. So he took that advice, and then we sort of helped him to devise a strategy to get 200,000 of funding to settle the debt instead of like letting the credit card roll, which was like 5% loan interest. So then, okay, really, then he's happily ever after. Really.
Well, that's the thing. Like these kinds of mistakes that people make, they don't realize until it's too late, right? But is that the common mistakes that you find dealing with all these people that come for your help?
The biggest mistake is ignorance.
Ignorance.
We talk about financial illiteracy. I think that's the biggest mistake. I think the fact that we need to continue to educate, create awareness. I think also the trust, because there's so much Ponzi and scam, right? It's like when I go to, let's say, the market and people don't know me.
It's like, who are you? What?
Yeah, right? Why do I have to listen to you? Like, who are you, right? And then what's your track record? So I think that's one of the reasons why I'm very appreciative to come to iMoney
for platforms like this to talk,
and sponsored by CapBay. It's because then I get to amplify my voice. Then I give people a avenue to turn to a safe space. Knowing that these are genuine people who really want to help.
To dispel the illusion that everyone's out to get your money or something like that.
Of course, you still can go to the financial planners, but I think people are still very concerned, like, when you go to the doctor, let the doctor check. Then there's this fear.
Yeah, there's always a fear like you might find out something worse about yourself.
Correct. So I think there's this stigma, especially people are fearful of approaching a financial plan, because especially they don't know and they haven't really
engaged in
built
this kind
that
of like
trust over time, right? So that's why I felt that this financial education method or avenue is
it's a good
less
gateway.
invasive. Less invasive.
It's a much more welcome approach rather than a very scary for a lot of people. Because it is true, like you wouldn't want to go to a financial unless you have a problem. Like you wouldn't want to go to see a doctor unless you're sick. People never thought like, well, you should be seeing a doctor even then because you need your checkup and everything, right? But people tend to push their problems until it becomes an issue, right?
Yeah, I have an auntie who passed away due to breast cancer. The fact that she knows she have it, but she don't
never
do
went to the
anything
doctor.
about it, like,
why?
It was so sad when we found out when stage 3 is like advanced.
Okay, that's the thing, right? It's about people taking the time to learn about this. On that point though, like you want to talk to people, engage with people, like if that's the case, like what would be your advice to people who are, still wary about approaching you guys, or even like advice on financial planning altogether?
I wouldn't say it's advice. I would say like we make platforms avenue for people to easily get exposed to us. Like we have this 3 days program for free on a monthly basis that people can come in, learn at no cost and no stress, right?
So just take the leap, basically.
So we wanted to have more of this kind of like neutral learning opportunities for people. Yeah. I feel that that's better way lah. What do you think?
I mean, I think that's a good approach, a good start in the end. But we're going to wrap it up on this side, because after this, we'll talk more about the other investment platform, because like you also have some opinions about that. We'll be back right after this. In this section, we're going to talk more about investing and taking action about your finances, because like we have Ka Hoe here, someone who's actually knowledgeable about this. We want to talk about more about the different investments that people can approach, because there's a lot. You can go stocks, you can go, you need trust and everything. But I just want to get your opinion on what it means for people to start investing. Like, what are the fears? What are the general misconceptions that you feel like people have about investing?
That's a very good question. I've been asking this question constantly in our community and all the physical and webinar talks, trying to understand if there is this number one challenge people have in investing. Would you like to guess which is the top?
My personal opinion is like fear of...
very good, very good.
Right.
Yeah. That's the 90% of what people share with us. The fear of losing capital. That's the number one.
I mean, I guess it's still commonplace, right? Being afraid of putting your money into something you can't control. Because from like my personal opinion is that investing in stocks, right? You're putting faith in something that's not you are in charge of, right?
You start until faith, that level. You don't have to go to that level. Just come to the understanding level.
Putting trust in something else. If it's, because like for people, I think, for me at least, investing in something like low risk that provides stable returns is something that people are more willing to go towards for. But if it's something like investing in a Tesla stock or T stock or N stock, those graphic makers, graphic makers, the movement of the market can seem scary for a lot of people. You could be making a lot one day and you could lose everything the next.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up, because I think this is the number one challenge that most people have. But let's shift the perspective a little bit. Let's work with you.
Wow, okay. I'll be the victim today. The patient.
Let's have you, just dig a bit about brain. Since you dig mine, I get to dig yours as well.
Okay, that's fair.
The fear is real, but let's say if I were to give you this perspective, right? Because it's the same analogy why iMoney is telling people like, hey, you're putting money in fixed deposit, good, but if you're putting 100% of money in the fixed deposit, there is an unseen risk as well, right? Which is inflation, right?
Yes, of course.
But people, because they don't see it, then they tend to like, no need lah, never mind lah, it's okay.
I mean, when it comes to things like fixed deposit and all this, you think of it as a savings rather than investment, right? You just put it there and you forget it, and you don't really see any other risk that's associated with it.
So there's this illusion that a lot of people, because we wake up every day, here's the funny story I always tell my students, right? We wake up every day, then we ask all our colleagues, right? Hey, let's run lah. Let's go and get healthy exercise, right? Then your colleagues will ask, hey, run where? Run to where? Come on, just run first. Just run
Just
first.
do first.
Just do first, right? Then they will follow you, wodo, and then they're like, hey, after so many years, we're still running to where? So why I tell this analogy is because that's essentially what every employee, every solopreneur, every business owner that doesn't have a finish line, they don't know where they're running to. Funny enough, in real life, we don't do that, right? If your friend asks you to run, you tell them, go where first, before you start running, right?
Of course.
But if you put this analogy into, let's say, our financial freedom or our retirement goal, funny enough, many people will run, like they're doing their job, they're going to work every day, without knowing where is the
end
finish
goal,
line.
really, right?
Isn't that very weird?
I mean, now that you put it in that, it scares me even more.
So the moment when we help people to identify the finish line, a lot of people will take action because the fact that they know where they are. Okay, this is the other blind spot. Many people don't know where they are financially. Of course, you know you are here in iMoney office. I know I'm here in iMoney office. If we know, let's say our lunch is going to be in what? Bangsa.
Oh, okay.
Technically, we know how to go there. But financially, that's going to be very difficult because number one, we don't know where is our finish line. Number two, we don't know where we are financially. That's the challenge. So imagine those people, like we were saying, put 100% of the money in FD, and then they forget about it. They're technically sitting duck every day doing, so to speak, things that's supposed to move them towards the finish line, but it doesn't. So I share this rule of 72 in my class very often, right? I always like to tease the people who put money in FD. So the rule of 72 is just a rule of thumb, how you can help to measure. Let's say if you want to measure how fast your money is doubling. Let's say if 100,000, you want to double your FD in 200,000, how fast you want to do it. So you take 72, you divide by 3, because FD is about 3%.
Yes.
Then you will get the answer, which is the length of time you will take to double.
Right.
So 72 divided by 3 is about 24 years. So I always ask them, I say like, hey, you okay? Your money doubled 24 years? They're like, no. I say,
I'm sure they should want it faster, right?
Exactly, right? Then the question next will be like, then how fast do you want to double your money? So the reverse of it is true. So let's say, for example, you feel comfortable putting something like 8% return. So you take 72 divided by 8, then you get your number. But I don't know what's that number. Maybe you can calculate for me.
Well, I'll just do that by themselves, but it would take a different time.
Correct. It will take much faster than 24 years, right?
Yes.
So what we found out, or what I found out when I was developing my double your net worth formula, is that this 5-step process, if you bodo follow, will double your wealth in 7 years. So if you take 72 divided by 7, right? Technically, your wealth is growing at 10.3% a year.
So that's a lot.
But that's a lot harder, for a lot of people to brain. Is because 10.3, or wow,
where can find something like this, right?
But the thing when we share with our students, is actually not a secret, or it's not like a magic pill you have to take. It's actually accounting. Yeah. The 10.3, you basically split it into 6% growth in your asset and reduction of 4.3% in your loans.
So that's the actual...
Yeah, what can you invest in 6%? EPF, right?
That's the thing, I don't really think of EPF as like...
But technically, if you put it in that perspective, EPF is quite a risk-free kind of investment that gives you 5 to 6% a year, right? For last year's performance they announced recently, I think it was like 6.4,
yeah,
right?
6.3, 6.4, around that range, right?
Then I'm like, hey, this is no-brainer, but why is it still so a lot of people can't double their wealth? A lot of people ask me after they know this formula. Then I tell them, actually, it's very simple. It's like, you know how a pilot will fly from, let's say, Malaysia to, say for example, Switzerland. Switzerland is the number one place people want to retire. They give us something back. Why do you still need a pilot when it's autopilot already? Have you ever wondered?
It's a backup safety, right? Because in case something happens to autopilot, you need a pilot there still.
That's true, but there's a different reason. If you ever talk to pilot, right? Pilot, when they chart out the flight path, they know that the flight, the plane will always deviate from the goal one.
Oh, okay.
The 1 degree deviation after 14 hours, you land up in maybe Russia.
Yeah, that's like miscalculation can be quite painful.
So why I'm giving this analogy is because why people cannot use this 5-step is because do they review it on a yearly basis or not?
Right. They don't do that checkup thing because, again, we mentioned earlier, people are afraid to do that yearly checkup, basically, right?
So that's why I'm bringing back to the investing part is when people have this perspective, then it doesn't feel so fearful anymore, right, investing.
Once you elaborate like what's the approach there would be much more understanding in terms of what you're coming into, rather than just saying, you just go, just run, just put there. Because that's, I think, the misunderstanding for a lot of people. Like,
exactly.
They don't know what they're putting into.
And the number one question I always get as a coach, speaker, trainer, and a financial planner, they always ask, hey, Ka Hoe, what's the best investment out there?
I was actually going to ask this after this, right? Because we have you here. We have to ask
the moment when you ask the question, I know you don't have the 2 points the start point and end point.
Right.
That's why you can't figure out. Do you ask the question, if you're, let's say you want to go to Switzerland, do you ask the question, do I take bus, car or flight? You don't, right?
You know already.
Yeah. Isn't that very funny if I've put it into that perspective?
A lot of people don't really know where they're going in terms of financial journey, right?
Yeah.
But again, that realization can be scary for some people, which is why I think there's still that fear of approaching people like you in that sense.
Yeah.
But seriously, what you guys find is good.
Yeah, that's the answer. You need to go and find your 2 points first. Once you find your 2 points, then you know flying maybe is what you wanted. You can accept the risk, because flying got risk, right? But you want to get there fast, right?
So you're willing to take that risk?
Exactly.
Right? Maybe it's safer you want to take a boat.
Yeah, some people will take the route less travel, right? You hear people drive before, right?
Yes, journey across the country.
Because they wanted to enjoy the journey, yeah.
Maybe that's their preference there.
So that's why we say there's no one size fits all. Basically, the number one biggest problem in investing is because people don't know what they want.
I would assume people have the general conception of like they want to retire.
Yeah. They want fast. They want.
But that's the thing. Is
low risk, high return.
All these keywords. But again, it's about dispelling that myth about what needs to be done, right?
Yeah, but there's another additional pointer I wanted to add, especially if people still find it very difficult to invest, is because if they know this key event that happened in 72, I think as a result, people will be more willing to invest. Do you know the Nixon shock event?
Nixon shock event? I'm not
sure. Prior to 72, right, the dollar is pegged to gold.
So it's like maintain that currency, right?
Yeah, do you know after 72 it's no longer pegged to gold? I mean, prior to 72 we are still under Bretton Woods Agreement. Bretton Woods Agreement means to say they still peg currency to gold. But technically after 72, when it's not pegged to gold,
everything goes...
what are you holding?
Make-believe money, basically.
I mean, it's still, we call it fiat currency.
Yes, fiat currency, yeah.
But it's actually backed by debt. So if you know that the money that you're earning is your hard work, your blood, sweat and tears, you're working for this, right? And the fact that this money continue to depreciate over time, won't you want to convert this money to something that appreciates over time? Right. That's actually investing.
Again, people are not seeing that perspective.
No, because a lot of people don't know.
Right?
They don't know what happened. So in our education classes, we teach this. And when people know, I'm still surprised. I've been sharing this for the past 14 years, 16 years. There's still people don't know.
Shouldn't be so shocked actually, because it turns out that's the case right now.
But now that you know what you know, don't you feel more confident wanting to convert your paper money into assets that appreciate over time?
Yeah, because why hold on to that cash when you can grow it, right? But again, I think there's also that misunderstanding, but also the fear of like different platforms when it comes to investment, right? Because like, as we mentioned, there's a lot of platforms that you can go for, stocks, unit trusts, and alternative platforms as well.
So I think to add on to this, I think the question always people ask me is it stock, UT, or alternative, right? Then my answer to them is like, why not all?
The best approach would be, diversify as much as possible, correct?
So the second biggest challenge in investing, we constantly get the feedback from our classes, is the lack of capital. That means they don't have the cash flow to put in to build their capital. So when you're having the lack of capital, that's why you always have to like, is this unit trust, or is it stock, or is it property, or is it like P2P, right? Then I'm like, why not all?
But then it's just how your approach is, like how you want to.
So we work with them in terms of how we can help them to free up the cash flow. That's why the debt, the deficit, all these things are the bottlenecks to investing. If you cannot clear your cash flow, you cannot clear your debt, so to speak. Clear your debt doesn't mean you have to pay off, but clear your debt is just to restructure in such a way that you don't have to pay such a high amount every month. You have an excess
of capital to put in.
Correct. Right? So technically, if you have excess free cash flow, then you don't have problem investing, right?
Yeah, of course. That shouldn't be the case, right?
Then the next step is just about, do you have the skill set to invest? Right?
I don't know if that's the part of your skill set as well, to advise people on what to invest on that front.
Yeah, we educate them in terms terms of all the, okay, essentially if you analyze any individual, each person will have easily about 5 to 6 different asset classes that they're putting the money without them knowing already. So if you really look at the whole general market, I think there's easily 18 to 20 different assets, not asset class, different assets. So then, how do you choose, right?
Overwhelming of choice, right?
Yeah. So we don't actually tell people what to choose to invest, but because when they have their roadmap, they know how fast they need to get there.
Then they know which to take,
Exactly.
right? So if, let's say, I want something more, I am thinking long term, I'm thinking 25, 50 years. I might look towards more stable, something like an EPF, which can double my money in like more than that in 20 years, and I'm okay with that. But if I'm looking at myself and I say, I want to reach double my money in 10 years, then I might search and survey something that's much more, that brings more revenue or brings more returns in a shorter time.
There you go.
And then how I'm comfortable to take on that risk as well, right? And that's probably the education that people need to know or need to hold on to.
Yes.
Wow, suddenly brain like
So suddenly like clear already, right? Clear already, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, because once you know your goal, your end goal, when you're starting off, which some people still have problem with, but once you know those two things, the path is probably much more clearer.
Yep. So that's where we come in, right? We're just helping people clarify.
That's the best you can do with a lot of people in terms of like giving advice. And I actually want to end it off with you telling us and the audience and the viewers here, like, what key advice you would give to them to sum it all up. Because, like, again, you've mentioned know your start, know your end. Is that the end all be all? Is that the first step they need to have ready?
Of course not. That is just the starting. Yeah. Then, if you can see, in order to be able to reach your end goal, you need to have that constant cash flow, right? And hence, investing is really the crucial activity people need to have, because you cannot reach your destination by paying off your loan, It's like you have to do both. Like, remember I was telling you how you double your wealth. Basically, you increase your asset and you pay down your loan. But a lot of people generally, which are more risk averse, when they have excess money, they tend to pay down their loan first, right? Then the question they always ask me, hey, Ka Hoe, should I invest or should I pay off my loan? I say, why not do both? Then they're like, oh, then the challenge again is cash flow lah. So I keep saying this in my classes. I say you never reach your financial goal if you don't invest. It always has to be both, investing and paying down your loan.
So the mentality is just don't be stuck on one.
Correct. So when you have to constantly invest, then you need to be comfortable. Like you have to understand, right? That's why I say it's not to the faith level, right? You just have to understand.
Just understanding that.
We teach people or we share with people the history of money. We like bring them through the 50 years so that they can get a perspective of what investing is really is. Investing is really just about converting your fiat currency
into appreciating
assets that appreciate over time.
That's all. It's that simple, right?
So if you can be able to learn the skill set of identifying good assets meaning to assets that appreciate over time, then
it's done.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually as simple as that. And yeah, I think that's probably a good advice for everyone watching.
I mean, this is not advice. This
general education.
Yeah. Because this practice as a financial planner, we don't give advice
right.
unless we know specific
what
situation of the person. So this is more like general sharing. It's like it's there, but it's just for me to make it easier for you to understand in this manner.
So speaking about alternative investments, you've given us the sharing of like what we need to do, what you need to approach investing on. But looking at the different platforms available, what are your thoughts on that? Because again, there's a lot there, like traditional platforms like unit trust and all that, and there's alternative platforms as well. Could you elaborate more on like what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So thanks for bringing up the question, because when we are talking about 18 different assets, right, and when a lot of the students and clients, they will ask, like, where do I start? So from our perspective, we do empower our students to really build up that portfolio for them. So what does portfolio mean is basically, it's just a collection of different assets. You have your low, your medium, your high.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, the percentage of how much you want to put into each of these low, medium, and high really comes down to, let's say for example, you are the person, right? You have different risk profile than me. Yeah, what you can take, the risk may be different from what I can take.
I might be a more low risk or risk averse kind of person.
Exactly, and then I'm figuring out that you're much younger than me. And then, different age will also bring in the different dynamics of in terms of what risks you can take, right? So we have this model which allow people to identify, and then from there, let's say for example, somebody who can take 50 low, 10 medium, and 40 high, for example. I'm just throwing out there.
Okay.
Then of course from there, then you will have your baskets of low risk, then you go and pick like your EPF, your FDs.
The usuals.
You need to have them, right? Medium will be something like, we talk about your alternative, your properties, the medium, right? Then the high will be like maybe stocks, equities, or maybe some alternative will also come out into the high, especially we talk about crypto investments, or businesses, or like talk about venture capital or private equity, right? Yeah, so all those will be high. So essentially, individually, they need to understand like what works with them. So when this whole collection of investments, say, comes down to this one low will give 4 to 6, then this medium gives 6 to 8, and then the high gives 8 to 10. From that average, essentially, you will get a number. And that number, can it bring you from where you are
to where you want to go?
Exactly.
Right?
So that's what we are working with our students and clients. So, I mean, since you're talking about alternative, right? I'm talking about CapBay because they're the sponsor today, right? I think P2P has come out very new.
It is a relevantly new platform, right? Because I myself was not familiar with P2P before this, but after learning about CapBay and what their work is, and it is a burgeoning platform there.
What I find it very interesting is when I conduct my classes, there are still a lot of people who don't know what's P2P. And that's why I wanted to create this awareness, right? It's not so much just about the product, but it's about how people use this for their benefit, right?
Yeah, again, we mentioned the knife thing. It's how you use it, whether or not it can be beneficial, or if you don't know how to manage it properly, it can be terrible.
So that's why there will be like a lot of P2P investments in the market. Then how do you choose, right? So I think one of the things that I remember very clearly, in fact, like I had an opportunity to invest into CapBay when they were starting up, when they were doing the fundraising at the time. The time I was going through my third crisis.
Wow.
So I didn't have enough capital to invest.
Wow, you still managed to go through.
Why am I telling this is because I think one of the things I really like about CapBay is the invoice factoring. Have you heard of invoice factoring before?
Again, this is something I've learned recently with what CapBay does, invoice factoring. Again, it's a very specialized service, if I would say, and not many people are aware of what it does.
So I first heard about invoice factoring somewhere in 2018. I'm thinking like, what is that? So when I got to do a lot more research and understanding, I'm like, oh, this is a very interesting product. And to be honest, there's not many players in the market that's doing invoice factoring.
Exactly.
I mean, the ones that are above the line, I think there are a lot below the line that I'm also not aware of.
Yeah, but that's like a smaller, different approach, right?
Yeah. When they came in doing the invoice factoring, I thought that was very interesting because to me, it felt safe. Okay, maybe I'll just give the context a little bit, especially since we're talking about that, right? So maybe just to give a context to the audience, what P2P is. P2P essentially is, why I like P2P is because the conventional people who got into debt, they typically take a credit card, a personal loan, right?
Yes.
Typically the interest rate will be very high, right?
Yes.
So I think somewhere back in 2012, 2013, we start to hear in China, they have this P2P trend coming out, where people could go to P2P platforms, they could take a lower interest kind of loan that could save them, and the platforms basically get the funding from investors at large. They also
It's
get
like a direct crowd funding kind of thing, right?
So they get to benefit. So I'm like, hey, this is a very good idea. Yeah. So we're waiting for it to come to Malaysia. Finally, it came about, I think, 2017, 2018, if I'm not mistaken. A couple of P2P players I've gone through as well. The S1 and then the F1.
Okay.
So when I got to know CapBay at the time, then I think they were I think they were the only one who was doing invoice factoring. And invoice factoring essentially is like the P2P, but is specifically serving the business community.
Yes, it's B2B tailored, right?
So the simple analogy would be like, I'm doing business, and let's say I work with a big conglomerate, say the banks, for example. Yeah. For people in the business community, they know that when you're doing a work for them, typically they take a very long time to pay.
Yes.
And for smaller businesses like me,
that could mean life and death, right?
we need a lot of cash flow, right? So there's no way you're going to wait 6 months.
Just waiting for them to pay.
Exactly, right? So I think when invoice factoring came in, I felt like, hey, this is a very good solution because I can get access, I can get paid first. Yeah.
And then you can move on to the next project.
Exactly,
and
then they will collect from the big boys, right? And of course, doing business, there's costs, right?
Of course.
Even if I don't use invoice factoring, basically I would need some form of personal loan or overdraft.
Something to hold you on for the cash flow there, right?
So I've spoken to a lot of business friends in the business community. I was asking them to look at CapBay from the funding perspective, not just as investors to put money. Yeah. And many of them find that, I've never heard of this solution before, and they find it very interesting. They can get.
Yeah, because that product is not really well known, or even people understand how it works, right? And then when you explain it to it, and then it provides that kind of stability, that probably can encourage people more to explore it.
Exactly. So it's a win-win-win, right? It's three-party win. It's like the business
get the money,
and then the big boys still pay out 6 months later.
Yeah, they can pay when they're able to.
And CapBay secures, or the invoice factoring players come in to secure both transactions because they know the big boys will run away. And then they are charging the interest. They are, it's a four-win. We're charging interest on the business. They get the return, which will eventually pay out to the investors that pool the money together, right? So I'm like, this is a good solution.
And as an investor, it looks like there's no way you can lose, right? But of course,
okay, I wouldn't say that.
But of course, there's the caveat. Everything has ups and downs. Like,
everything has risk, right? Yeah, as long as you understand the risk.
That's the thing. That's where we need to come at the end. Because CapBay is an amazing platform, but it's always about you as an investor understanding what the platform offers, and then understanding its risks and its benefits as well.
So that's why, just to add on, I'm very active in the property investor space. So I'm in this property investor community, right? Somebody actually came to me and say that, hey, Ka Hoe, is this 8% a good deal or not? And when I look at it, it's some SSM, somebody doing the preference share. I'm like, if you want to get 8%, why don't you go and check out P2P or invoice factoring like CapBay like that? Then he's like, who's CapBay? Then I'm like, okay, no risk. I actually hosted them in one of our community webinar before, so I invited them to come in and listen. And I'm like, wow, got such thing. And I'm thinking if you're going to spend so much time evaluating this investment, then these are legit people already
established.
Yeah, and then this is a no-brainer, isn't it?
I mean, it should be.
I mean, no-brainer. I say you don't have to go and spend so much time taking the additional effort to go and study where there is a legit. You just have to spend some time studying here, and then you still get the 8%, right?
Yeah, but some people will go to hoops for this kind of thing. Their reasoning there. But again, it is, when we come back to investment as a whole, is your approach would be understanding what your approach is, what your risk averse is, and then when you choose a platform, you have to understand what risk it comes with it.
Yep.
Right. And with CapBay itself, again, they provide solutions that's not really being offered right now by anyone else, especially invoice factoring, and that is a potential for investors as well.
I wouldn't say they are low risk. I would say they are mid risk, because you cannot really compare them to FD.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but I think from that perspective, as a property investor, I think it brings a lot of different perspective of getting the similar kind of return for the kind of similar risks. Yeah, that's why I would compare them in the property investment space.
This is what your taste is, basically.
Yeah.
But of course, the caveat, of course, understanding your risk and approaching it to what you are willing to do. Because, like, again, depending on what you're trying to achieve, what your goal is,
Exactly.
it can be different in the end of the day. Well, I mean, we've gone through a lot today, Ka Hoe, and I think we've learned a lot. So before we wrap things up, let's just, I'm going to give you the chance to shout out whatever you want to share with the audiences, maybe, again, your JA or whatever courses that you feel like people should know about you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I think one of the reasons why I am grateful for iMoney and CapBay to allow me to come and share my thought is essentially wanting to amplify our voice to invite audience who really want to learn financial education. If you feel that they wanted to learn in a safe space, like a step-by-step, like we were saying, if you just want to bodo follow the 5-step double your net worth framework, essentially they can come in to enroll that in our program. It's not the cheapest, but it's a paid program. We design it in such a way. We have our free program, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, but just to give people a taste, like what kind of results what kind of learning you can come in. But essentially, the paid program we designed in such a way that we wanted serious people who are willing to pay and willing to get
really
the
want
result.
to make that change, right?
Yeah.
Understand. Where can they go to learn more about your academy?
Yeah, so they can actually go to our website, ja.academy.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are in the midst of rebranding, so they can find out those details there. And of course, I post on social media every day. I mean, if you really enjoy the kind of stories that I've been sharing, I post daily. So there's a reason why for people to be able to understand as a licensed financial planner, as a financial educator, coach, because a lot of people really don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, they just assume, like, oh, financial planner, insurance seller. But as we all learned today, Ka Hoe is definitely more than that.
Yeah.
We'll put up your socials in our chat as well so people can learn more about Ka Hoe. And as well, if you want to learn more about CapBay and CapBay P2P investment, you can go to capbay.com. Thank you again, Ka Hoe, for coming today and sharing your knowledge with us. And if you enjoyed what we had today, we hope we see you again for the next episode. Until then, goodbye.